welcome to all of you. It's my great pleasure as the Executive Director of the International Vaccine Access Center to welcome you to this webinar titled Learning from the COVID-19 Pandemic, Emerging Priorities in Vaccine Safety and Pharmacovigilance in Asia and the Pacific. This webinar is co-hosted by the International Vaccine Access Center at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and by the Asian Development Bank. During this webinar, we will examine issues related to COVID-19 vaccine safety and pharmacovigilance faced by countries in Asia and the Pacific, and priorities for strengthening vaccine safety and pharmacovigilance systems going forward. We have 5 speakers today, and so we'll move quickly. I'll briefly introduce the speakers now, and then hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Sonalini Ketrapal, to say a few words on behalf of the Asian Development Bank. Our first speaker will be Dr. Daniel Salomon, who's a professor at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and director of the Institute for Vaccine Safety. Dr. Salomon is a vaccinologist who conducts epidemiological and behavioral studies to assess the safety of vaccines and improve vaccine decision-making. Our second speaker will be Sherry Morgan, an infectious disease epidemiologist and faculty member here at the International Vaccine Access Center, and really the one coordinating the collaboration between IVAC and the Asian Development Bank. She will be followed by Dr. Madhava Balakrishnan, who's an epidemiologist and expert in vaccine safety, and who serves as a medical officer in global vaccine safety as part of the pharmacovigilance team at the World Health Organization. And he has developed methods and tools for assessing vaccine safety. The next speaker will be Dr. Gloria Cho, a technical officer on vaccine preventable diseases and immunizations in the Western Pacific Regional Office of the World Health Organization. And her work focuses on vaccine safety and pandemic vaccines. Our final speaker will be Dr. Sonam Wangchuk, who's the program director of the Royal Center for Disease Control in the Ministry of Health in Bhutan and chair of the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group, the NITAG of Bhutan. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sonalini Ketrapal, who's a senior health specialist for South Asia at the Asian Development Bank. She is a health specialist focusing on supporting ADB operations in South Asia with areas of expertise in health systems, health financing, and service delivery, and who played a critical role in the Asian Development Bank's support in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So Dr. Ketrapal, I'll turn it over to you for some opening remarks on behalf of ADB.
Thank you so much. And a very warm welcome to all the participants and the speakers to this webinar. COVID-19 pandemic brought in challenges that were unprecedented. 2 critical elements of response included collaboration and speed with which we could mobilize support. Our speakers today are a reflection of that collaboration that was critical in responding to the pandemic, with the government's driving response. So I was just saying that to date, ADB has approved $5.79 billion to support COVID vaccine efforts, and over $139 million was given in grants for vaccine rollout. The experiences and learnings have been immense from the development, deployment, use, and scale-up of vaccines. Some of these key learnings include expedited vaccine development, especially the heightened need for rigorous and transparent safety assessments, real-time surveillance and reporting for FEs, public distribution considering vulnerable and marginalized populations, and innovations in use of technology to facilitate reporting. With that, please allow me to hand over to our experts to share with us experience and lessons to better equip us in building a resilient health system for the future. Thank you very much.
So we can go to our, thank you, Dr. Ketrapal. We can go to our first
speaker. First speaker. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, welcome everyone. And I've Good day to you. I've been asked to speak very briefly about why pharmacovigilance is important. Moving to the next slide. So firstly, we need to be able to detect and characterize adverse reactions not detected in pre-authorization trials. And if you look at the sample size needed to detect rare adverse reactions from a clinical trial, you see that they're really quite large. So for example, if you wanted to detect in a randomized controlled trial, a doubling of risk for a health outcome that occurred at a rate of 1 in 1,000, you would need a sample size of about 50,000 people in that trial, which is larger than most clinical trials. However, because vaccines are so widely used, missing such an adverse reaction could impact a large number of people. So, for example, using a US example, if you were to have a adverse reaction that was at a risk of 1 in 1,000 attributable to vaccination, and you vaccinated every child one time, this would impact 4,000 children. And if you were to vaccinate all people in the United States, this would impact 330,000 people. So, randomized controlled trials are wonderful from a methodological standpoint, but there are limitations in terms of sample size. Additionally, you need to rule out adverse events following immunization that are coincidentally related to vaccines. And this falls into the logical fallacy that after this, therefore because of this, and it's a fallacy. But we know that bad things happen to people every day, and if we vaccinate everyone today, every bad thing that happens tomorrow, by chance alone, will be related to the vaccine. So as an example, in the US, we see 2,500 miscarriages and 3,000 heart attacks each day. So by chance alone, we know these things will happen after vaccination. And we need to distinguish between coincidental events and events that are causally related to vaccines. I'm just giving as an example a paper that we published prior to the H1N1 vaccine program, where we looked at different health outcomes like Guillain-Barré and optic neuritis, and then the rates occurring within different time windows, a day, a week, and 6 weeks. And of course, the frequency of these things will depend on how you measure them and where you measure them. The point of this paper and the point here is that we anticipate that adverse health outcomes will happen after vaccination. So our goal is to figure out what's really caused by the vaccine. Vaccines are exceedingly safe, but not perfectly safe, to rule out coincidental adverse events following immunization. And to do so, it requires passive surveillance, first to detect signals, and then some sort of active surveillance or investigation to really look at those signals and determine whether they are true adverse reactions or simply coincidental events occurring after vaccination. So with that brief introduction, let me turn things over to Sherry.
Thank you so much. So what I wanted to present also is what our I'm sorry, previous slide. So vaccine safety and pharmacovigilance work that we are presenting right now and talking about, it's part of a larger study on COVID-19 vaccine delivery, which has been sponsored by the Asian Development Bank. And the objective is to assess lessons learned to share with other countries for future pandemic preparedness, also to understand best practices and challenges related to COVID-19 vaccine delivery in areas that have included policies and politics, financing, supply, health systems, and vaccine demand and hesitancy. But we are also specifically looking at vaccine safety and pharmacovigilance, with the goal to provide recommendations to the Asian Development Bank on the types of investments or technical assistance that could strengthen preparedness for future pandemics in Asia and the Pacific. Next slide. Within this work, we have completed over 100 key informant interviews with respondents across 6 countries, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Mongolia, Pakistan, and Tajikistan, and also an additional 12 interviews with regional and global vaccine safety experts identified through a snowball approach. We've conducted these semi-structured interviews through an interview guide, and to identify facilitators and challenges to vaccine safety and pharmacovigilance, which you will hear today later from our speakers. These interviews have been transcribed, coded, and a thematic analysis has been conducted and supplemented with a literature review. These recommendations will be made to EDB, and the findings will be summarized in a brief that will be publicly available. Next slide. So what do we want to learn regarding vaccine safety and pharmacovigilance? We want to learn the status of the current safety surveillance efforts. What are the facilitators or barriers to strengthening? And how has the pandemic changed this or not? What has been learned through the COVID-19 pandemic? How do we ensure efforts are both integrated and sustainable moving forward? And also, what are the investments or technical assistance needed for future pandemics like COVID-19 for that preparedness at a country or regional level, such as advocacy, prioritization at the political level, human resources, as well as having strengthened systems and methods for reporting. And the next. So I want to pass it over to our speakers. All of them bring a large wealth of knowledge in the space of vaccine safety and pharmacovigilance at the global, regional, and country level. Many have been with vaccine safety since the very beginning. So I will first pass it off to Dr. Madhava Balakrishnan from World Health Organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I share the screen, please? 1 minute. Is my screen visible?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. So, right. So, first of all, I want to thank the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, the IVAC, and the ADB for giving WHO an opportunity to share with you some of the interesting information on our experiences with the COVID-19 pandemic. I have exactly 15 minutes and I would like to stick to time. So let me just get down to brass tacks. So what is our primary experience in terms of safety monitoring and information flow during the pandemic? It was actually an evolving landscape. We should understand that simultaneously we had things like new vaccines, drugs and diagnostics, which were newly developed and introduced simultaneously both in high-income countries and in low-income countries. So all of us learned together in real time. The biggest problem we faced was risk to the pharmacovigilance systems at the same time. You should understand there was this things related to patient risk. You know, because of the short-term time frame for product development, there was a lot of suspicions whether the vaccines will work and the risks involved to the safety part, particularly to patients. And also the product risk. How do you issue licenses? How do you withdraw licenses, etc.? And also the risk to the global health in undermining trust. Because one adverse event or something bad can actually create a lot of problems, not only for the pandemic, but also for routine immunization as well. And also these issues, particularly with regard to implementation of risk management plans, also becomes a major problem in the middle of this pandemic because it was done in the middle of a crisis. So from the global perspective, what am I going to be talking about? I'm just going to be touching 3 important points. The first one I'm going to be talking about is the pandemic specific. What did WHO create? How did we adapt? How did we evolve? And what were the innovations which WHO did? We are also going to be learning about the experiences and the lessons we learned during the pandemic, and also the key priorities for WHO based on the lessons learned. Now, mind you, what I'm going to tell you is it's an ocean of information, but I'm kind of asked to talk within 15 minutes. So let us quickly go through just the highlights. I'm just going to go through the highlights. First, we'll look at the pandemic specific creations, the adaptations, and the innovations. So what is the first thing which we did? Actually, if you look at it, we were very, very lucky. In fact, one of the persons who just talked just before me, Dan Salmon was also involved in the development of the vaccine safety blueprint. If you see, look at the dates here. In December 2019, we actually had a public consultation where we developed the global vaccine safety blueprint in the middle of the pandemic. Like, in April 2020, the first draft was created. And by the time the pandemic was well established, the vaccine safety blueprint 2.0 was luckily ready, which means we knew about the strategies and what exactly we had to do at that particular point in time. This was actually a very lucky break for us. Now, what did we do? The first and foremost thing which we did was we realized that countries need to have a strategy and very clear idea on what to do to establish surveillance systems. And what we did was what you see on the screen right now is the vaccine safety surveillance manual. This was fully developed. It included several modules. And in fact, you will not believe it, there was a global consultation for its preparation all the way from Seattle until Sydney. There were people who participated in the development of these modules. Now, what happened? It is not enough if you just develop these modules, right? It's very, very important for us to make sure that these modules are not only created as paper or as modules online, but it has to be operationalized. And for operationalization, WHO actually developed training modules, which has been completely disseminated through the regional offices, about whom you'll be hearing from Gloria right now. And from there into the countries where all these modules were actually used for building up the capacities of the countries. Now, this is what you're seeing on the screen right now is actually what we call as the tools, which we use for surveillance. What you see on the screen right now is something known as the AEFI surveillance cycle. The cycle begins with the detection of adverse events, notifying it to the health system, reporting it, investigating it, doing a data analysis, and determining the cause. So this is the AEFI surveillance cycle, which was established in 2011, 2012. Now, we had originally developed paper-based tools like, the AEFI reporting form, for reporting AEFI by the healthcare workers. The AEFI investigation form, which was also to investigate AEFI. What WHO did at this particular point in time was, in the middle of the pandemic, we customized this to COVID and made sure that these tools were available very, very quickly up to the district, not even up to the district level, up to the health worker level, to make sure that this was actually implemented. And one of the important things here is actually for data. How are you going to collect the data? Because collecting the data is very, very important. And so what was done was, we actually developed some interesting, we have this Uppsala Monitoring Center, which is actually the WHO program for international drug monitoring. What they did was they came up with new tools, including the VG Mobile for AEFI reporting. This has been now developed. It was developed during the pandemic, to be very frank. And the mobile, using mobile phone applications for collecting the data, bringing it into the national, to the district, to the province, to the national level, and into the global database. The second thing which we did was, in-country systems are already there. We don't want to kind of create duplicate systems. So we tried this interoperability solutions, existing systems like the DHIS2, the MedSafety app, and in-country, sometimes they use Excel databases, etc. So the interoperability systems were attempted. Now, mind you, some of them were successful. Some of them we really had some problems. Now, the other thing which we did was we created AEFI dashboards in WHO for bringing up, we created pipelines to bring data into WHO using both the WHO UNICEF JRF as well as the VG base. And last but not the least, we also developed e-learning courses on data management. It was a fantastic time for us because we were staying at home, all of us were working, and we got all this thing on board. And what did we do? We also created special modules. Like if you see what you see on the screen right now is actually we developed systems in the middle of the pandemic for active surveillance, including things like, cohort event monitoring, sentinel site surveillance, etc. Even how to set up surveillance systems for pregnant and breastfeeding women in the middle of the pandemic if they use the COVID vaccines. So this is what was created. We also brought in unique publications like, the management of anaphylaxis in the middle of the pandemic. So this was some of the key things which we learned. Also, if you see, two of the main e-learning courses which WHO has got, we have got an umbrella of courses. Two of those courses which were actually developed came in the middle of the pandemic. And that was actually the course on AEFI causality assessment and the course on AEFI data management. All this is now available online. For me, it has been a great achievement for WHO to bring this up in the middle of the pandemic. Now, also, we focused a lot on communications, particularly if you just look at it, there was a lot of information overload. This is what WHO termed as infodemics. We also brought in methods by which this could be kind of identified and responded to very, very quickly. So this is basically what were the creations, the adaptations and innovations. Let's come and see what were the lessons learned. I wanted to just focus, there were so many lessons learned, but I wanted to just focus on one thing. And especially, the need for the ability to identify issues and respond quickly. So in normal times, when you look at pharmacovigilance for vaccines and medicines, in normal times, there is passive reporting, surveillance, and from manufacturers, we identify signals and then we take action. But that is not possible during a pandemic because it's an emergency situations. So what we did was we brought in new systems which were adapted in place and brought into place. So what did we do? We did daily intelligence reviews, we reviewed the databases, networks, studies, literature. And then what we did was there was agile expert committees. I'll just show you that in a minute. And what happened was basically there was an assessment which was done almost on a daily basis, which helped us to communicate to the public, make statements, and also issue alerts. And also, most importantly, recommend to our committees. The two important committees at the global level is the SAGE and the GACS, which provided a lot of information at the global level. So the main thing was we became more proactive. There was almost real-time data collection and assessment, more resources were used, and a lot of coordination took place. And we were adjusting as the situation evolved, we went on adjusting. Now, if you look at the GACS subcommittee, which was evolved, I think I just explained this right here at the GACS subcommittee. When you just look at the GACS subcommittee here, the GACS subcommittee on COVID-19 vaccine issued a lot of alerts during this particular period. I've just given you a sample, like what you see on the screen. There were several statements which were issued by the WHO in the middle of the pandemic. Okay, so this is exactly what happened in the middle of the pandemic, and identifying issues and assessing those issues, evaluating those issues, and providing feedback to the global community was at the forefront of the work of WHO during this particular period. And the COVID-19 GACS subcommittee played a pioneering role in this particular place. We also brought out, you must have heard about the thrombocytopenia syndrome, which was actually identified with viral vector vaccines. So what we did was we actually, we reviewed you will not believe it, at that time there was a huge group of people who were assembled, like, experts, group of experts like hematologists, clinicians, so many people who were assembled together. And then they brought out this guidelines on the TTS guidelines on how to identify TTS, how to manage TTS, and also how to ensure that high-risk patients are kind of identified, and also how to manage those vaccines in those critical situations. So these two guidelines, the first guidelines was issued in the heat of the pandemic in 19th July, and the second edition of this just came out earlier this year. So I'm going to the last part of my talk. I'm going to be talking about the key priorities. So this is probably the most important part. So we learned some very important lessons. And what were the key priorities? Based on the lessons learned, how did we implement and how did WHO adapt its present systems here? So if you look at the key priorities, I'm going to focus it in the 4 critical areas. The first one is on data collection and processing. I will also tell you how our capacity building has changed based on the lessons learned, how research has changed, and how the coordination between stakeholders has been promoted because of the COVID-19 pandemic. To be very frank, I think for all of us, it has been a great learning. So the first and foremost thing is, basically, when you look at it, we used pharmacovigilance data to make decisions at a country level, global level, and this particular thing has got global implications. So if you look back at the AEFI surveillance cycle, what we developed was this Vigi tools. The Vigi mobile has become implemented into different levels. So right now, if you see, the data is being collected, it goes to the national database, and then it is approved and sent into the global database, and then it goes into the WHO PIDM database, where it can be analyzed and used. So this is what it is. Now, what we have done is using these tools, like what you see on the screen, this Vigi mobile, and also the Vigi flow for AEFI. This thing after the pandemic, like this training, what you see on the screen, those pictures are actually the experiences of WHO in Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean region. What we have done is we have implemented these trainings. The Vigimobile and Vigiflow have been implemented. Not only just implemented, we've started getting excellent data from all these countries into the global database. So work has already started, and this is full credits to the pandemic for helping us on this. We also developed new tools, like if you just look at it, we have developed training materials, the training modules. These are the new training modules which are being used. And right now, in fact, last week I had a training in Indonesia using these training modules we developed in the middle of the pandemic. The e-learning courses, what we have done is we have developed this vaccine safety at the ecosystem. You just have to click this link, and then you'll be taken to an ocean of resources which are available with WHO for which you can use. We also, what you see on the screen is actually we have got developed software, the electronic tools, which we used it now. We are currently using it in 4 countries for testing on molnupiravir, but mind you, the same electronic tools for data collection is available to countries free of cost, which can be used to collect data for research, which will be helping you to conduct active surveillance studies, whether it is drugs or vaccines. We'll be able to help you out. So this is the last part of my slide. If you just look at it, what you see on the screen is something very, very important. We realize that, there are multiple stakeholders for vaccines, especially, you have the regulators, you have the immunization program, you have the national pharmacovigilance centers. Many of the times you find that countries, all these, units do not work hand in hand. One of the most important thing which we need is to talk about collaboration. So that is why we are coming out with one particular thing of one country, one data. And this particular system is already started. It's already rolled out, and it's being implemented. So this is my last slide. So what are the learnings from the pandemic? What exactly did we learn? One of the important things, if you look at the ground level, at the grassroots level, the important thing to understand is clarity of reporting. People should know what to report, what is their roles and responsibilities, build up the capacities, make sure you provide adequate training, guidance, provide appropriate tools, not just electronic tools, but also, the paper-based tools and other tools which are necessary. There must be a system to monitor. And most importantly, I've highlighted this word accountability, which is a part of the new Global Vaccine Safety Blueprint 2.0. That is an accountability framework that is very, very important. And also for corrective action, we need to provide timely feedback. This will ensure that the system is very successful. I will stop there and hand over to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madhav, and for that fantastic overview of the World Health Organization's accomplishments and learnings. Just before we go to Dr. Gloria Chu, I just want to remind everyone that if you have questions, please place questions in the Q&A. And now we'll hear from Dr. Gloria Cho, who is at the Western Pacific Regional Office, and she's going to talk to us about experiences and lessons learned. Dr. Cho, thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Yes. So during COVID-19 pandemic, most countries in the region, the Western Pacific region, have enhanced the vaccine safety surveillance system to monitor and respond to adverse events. In these figures, 2 key indicators for vaccine safety surveillance reflect the enhanced AFI surveillance capacity, at least reporting capacity, although it's mainly passive surveillance system in the region. So on the left side, more than 70% of countries have greater than 10 total AFI cases per 100,000 doses. And approximately 57% of countries in the region have greater than 1 serious AFI cases per 100,000 doses. Next, please. So the region-specific AFI rates and experiences and lessons learned during COVID-19 pandemic era are well captured in 2 manuscripts. I believe these would become not only historically important, but also provide valuable insights in vaccine safety surveillance under mass vaccination as part of pandemic response. Next, please. So WHO Western Pacific Regional Office had supported countries' COVID-19 vaccination response through various tools and platforms, as shown as an example here. In order to provide the rapidly evolving information on COVID-19 vaccine safety, particularly during early stage of COVID-19 vaccination, we have developed information sheets on adverse events of special interest, and also conducted webinars, trainings, and telemedicine, as our colleague might have mentioned, especially about like TTS, the very challenging newly identified one after post-authorization. Also, we have a separate training for country-specific causality assessment committee and AFI data analysis especially during 2021 and 2022. These are some examples that we've disseminated to the countries. Next, please. This is also one of the tools we developed as addressed one of the manuscripts that I've actually introduced in slide 3. This algorithm was developed to support countries' decision-making process especially when AESI, adverse event of special interest, was detected and reported in other countries or regions. For example, TTS was initially identified and reported in early 2021, mainly outside the Western Pacific region. The pink bar at the top basically shows the usual process or steps that countries take when a serious AFI is reported within that country. And the gray part at the bottom is for the countries where a particular ASI was not detected yet in that specific country, but informed about it in other countries or regions. And the country need to prepare for further actions based on the reassessment of risk-benefit ratio. I believe this algorithm can be used for not only COVID-19 vaccines, but any vaccines in national immunization plans. Next, please. This might be one of the examples how the algorithm that I just talked about might be used. One of the most prominent adverse events of special interest following COVID-19 vaccination is myocarditis and pericarditis, as everybody knows. I think it's worth reviewing some key landmarks of this emerging safety signals, considering that mRNA vaccine platform is most dominantly used globally and also in the Western Pacific region. Still, also, there are still safety concerns related to this specific ASIs, particularly following booster doses. A few months after global COVID-19 vaccine rollout, the higher than expected myocarditis was reported in some countries like Israel, Spain, and more characteristics of ASI. This specific ASI was identified like young male following second dose. And late 2021, concerns raised about higher incidence following especially Moderna than Pfizer. And actually, some European countries issued preferential recommendation for Pfizer in young males. The most recent WHO statement, second booster dose, addressed the concern of myocarditis by reiterating that the risk is still higher after second dose, that is in primary series, than after fourth dose, that means second booster dose. Next, please. WHO vaccine reaction rates information sheets for COVID-19 vaccines are under development. Probably my colleague might have more updates, but so basically, as you all know, the WHO vaccine reaction rates information sheets already exist for 16 different vaccines like DTP, MMR, HPV, and etc. Serious adverse events would be summarized by vaccine platforms such as mRNA, protein subunit, inactivated, or viral vector. This implies that COVID-19 vaccine safety profiles are being established after more than 13 billion doses administered globally. Next, please. As we all know, public health emergency of international concern, FAKE, was declared over in early May. What does this mean in AFI surveillance? The simple answer is not much. So in other words, vaccine safety surveillance should continue. In fact, post-authorization pharmacovigilance is more significant for the vaccines newly introduced in pandemic settings, which in and of itself justified rapid development and introduction through mass vaccination to meet the needs of a global health emergency. Although more than 13 billion doses have been administered globally, it is still important to continue monitoring for long-term sequelae of key ESIs as well as in a specific subpopulation like pregnant women. Again, AFI surveillance should continue for all vaccines beyond COVID-19 vaccines, which I'll discuss more in the following slides. Next, please. So I will talk about more challenges that we identified for the past 3 years during COVID-19 in the Western Pacific region. So WHO Regional Office has conducted a regional survey on COVID-19 vaccination integration plan early this year. So in this survey, more than 65% of countries responded that COVID-19 vaccine safety surveillance either partially or completely integrated into overall routine immunization safety surveillance. However, this does not necessarily mean that the enhanced AEFI surveillance capacity through COVID-19 era has been sustained or it's sustainable in the context of integration. Next, please. Particularly, AFI investigation and causality assessment capacity is not sustainable due to budget cuts, HR withdrawals, especially in resource-limited settings. For instance, causality assessment has been paused since Q4 last year in some countries. So it caused a lot of backlogs of not yet assessed serious AFIs, which may increase the risk of mis or disinformation. Also, it can result in low vaccine uptake and increased risk of disease incidence. Next, please. Having said that, vaccine trust and acceptance issue has been more prominent as COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy tends to be spilled over into routine immunization. During the vaccine confidence survey, which was also conducted by our regional office risk communication team, 2 major reasons for vaccine hesitancy were identified as safety concern and lack of trust in vaccines. In the same survey regarding the question about likelihood to get vaccinated in routine immunization, including childhood vaccination as a result of COVID-19, less than 50% responded that they would be likely getting vaccinated for routine immunization vaccines such as polio, Hep B, measles, etc. Next, please. So the way forward would be mainly twofold. First, it is significant not to lose the capacity built up and enhanced through the pandemic response within the overall national pharmacovigilance system. I carefully chose the wording here, adjusting, here to highlight that it's time to shift from intensive AFI monitoring to regular and consistent monitoring. Same principle should be applicable to causality assessment as well. And one of the key strengths enhanced during safety surveillance during the pandemic was strong collaboration between EPI team and NRA, National Regulatory Authorities, in many countries. I really hope that countries do not lose this essential component for further strengthening the national pharmacovigilance system. Second, the vaccine hesitancy should be timely addressed, particularly empowering and equipping health workers. Actually, one of the vaccine confidence survey, as I mentioned earlier, the finding was that almost 80% respondents put healthcare workers as the most trustworthy source for vaccine and vaccination information. So it's important to empower them because they are efficient messenger for educating and advocating vaccination for the public. I think this is the end of my presentation. Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Cho, for providing us with this, overview from the regional perspective and how the regional office has supported countries with tools and methods, but also for identifying these very important challenges going forward. Our last speaker, Dr. Sonam Wangchuk from the Bhutan Ministry of Health and the NITAG. Dr. Wangchuk, over to you.
Thank you. Welcome to all. And again, thanks for organizer for giving us an opportunity to present on Bhutan experience for COVID vaccine delivery and its implementation. Next, please. Next slide. Okay, so in Bhutan, we have actually started preparing for the COVID vaccination as early as July 2020. So we have been, then I think we didn't have much information about what vaccine to come and what to expect, but nevertheless, we went ahead with the preparation, looking into the vaccine strategy and prioritization, and also the cold chain assessment. And also most important thing was, since it is a new vaccine, I mean, a lot of the concerns were there about the AAFI. So we wanted really to go with the digital, that means developing a Bhutan vaccine system where we can actually have all the data inclusively, including the coverage, and also important thing is really on the AAFI is to monitor on real-time basis. And also then we also looked into how to do a communication and advocacy on vaccine, as in vaccine information available. And most important thing was, once we know about the vaccine, we started also training our health workers on AFA management. And that's how I think we have prepared in the phase of implemented. And as of now in Bhutan, we have rolled out 2 primary series doses for all the eligible population, that is above 5 years to above 5 years age. And we have also rolled out 1 booster dose for all the population, that means from 5 years and above, and only the 2nd and 3rd booster dose only for the high risk group people. Next, please. Most important thing, I think, in our preparation, what we realized was, I think, coming out with very good digital system, whereby I think we can really monitor the AFI, especially when we are rolling out the vaccine as campaign mode. So what we have done is, right from the vaccine system, that is when it was ready, we started enrolling all the eligible population in the system for the planning purpose. Because by doing that, then we were able to sort of plan how much vaccination the post would be required and how much human resource to be deployed. And at the same time, most important thing is how much the doctors that would also require to do AFI case management in investigation. So even in the system, even there were a mobile app where even individual can report if there's any AFI. That's how I think we have started preparing for the vaccination. Next, please. And we have taken the advocacy very seriously, because there are a lot of vaccine, I think in the social media, the fear and anxiety, and that's what we really wanted to get to the people through various level of advocacy. So what we have done is, we have done a series of advocacy at the national level using a various media platform, including the televisions and other social media platform. At the same time, also at the local level, I think there was a series of cascades of advocacy was going on, both on the vaccine as well as the AFI. And also, I think side by side, I think they're headed by our honorable minister and prime minister, who are actually health expert. We have also doing a series of Zoom with all the leaders, so that they can also reach out to all the people and convince about the vaccine and its safety. Next, please. And for the campaign in Bhutan, all our vaccines, COVID vaccination was in campaign mode. So you'll find in our campaign that we didn't want to take any chance, especially on the series AFI and anaphylaxis. So you'll see in the picture that people are carrying the vaccine, not only the vaccine, but also you'll find in somebody's bag, there's the AFI kit and also oxygen cylinder. I think is being carried even to the remote vaccination post that is identified. And most important thing is, as I said, that we have also identified, based on the clusters, the doctors that need to be deployed according to the population of the vaccination catch-up campaign. Next, please. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, I'm not able to control a slide. And during the vaccination, the campaigns for the previous slide, please. We have been actually made mandatory, so that after the vaccination, all the people are actually kept for observation for 30 minutes mandatory. And before they leave, they also ask if there's any AFI, including the minor AFI. So if that is there, then health workers and nurses whoever were actually was observing, they would then report in the Bhutan vaccine system. So this is how I think the data was on real-time basis. And next slides. And if you, I just wanted to flag on the coverage. Next slide, please. So in all the vaccination campaign, we have achieved very high coverage. And on the AFA surveillance, which we took it very seriously, and we have come up with AFA surveillance system for the COVID. Of course, is all I think adopted from what we already have it, and from all the vaccination posts, and during the vaccination, if there's any cases, no, even in the minor cases, I mean, health workers from that vaccination post will report to the Bhutan vaccine system using their mobile or a small computers, and then from there, I think if there's any serious AFI, then it is notified to the investigation team for the investigation. At the same time, we have also using the social network WhatsApp, where all the doctors, vaccinators, and nurses who are involved were actually informed on the real-time basis. And then from that, I think the technical guidance, especially on AFA investigation, was guided by the regional AFA committee. This was not there before, but for the COVID purpose, we have made sure that we have a regional people to guide the people at the respective region. And also from there on, all the cases, serious AFA are being investigated on the real-time basis, and then the reports were all sent to the National AFA Committee, and then we have done the causality assessment. Next slide, please. On the patient management, I think if the vaccination poses any minor AFI that need a symptomatic management, they're also actually referred to the hospitals through the ambulance or through the private cars. And if they are serious, of course, they have been sent through the ambulance. And all the serious AFI actually are immediately referred to the either to the regional referral hospital or to the referral hospital. If it is a short distance, we have used the ambulance, and if it's require further refer from the district to the regional referral hospital, then we have used that chopper. So this is how the case we have managed. And as I said that the every campaign time, because our campaign for every vaccination campaign, our number of days actually we have been doing this around 7 to 10 days. Next, please. So this is the AFI, the report that we have generated from our Bhutan vaccine system. If you see in the left side, this is just the AFI that minor AFI that is reported through the Bhutan vaccine system, and you'll find it around 1.7 rates is a minor AFI that has been reported. And if you look into the signs and symptoms, you'll find commonly reported is the headache, fever, and of course the injection site pain and myalgia. Those are the few common. Even if you go by the vaccine brand, you'll find these are the common. And we have been actually monitoring all the AFA, minor AFA rate for entire campaigns. And as of now, if I look into the information and calculating the minor AFA rate, it comes around 0.57%. Next slide, please. And on next slide, please. And on serious AFI, again, since we have done it campaign based, so we have a data on every campaign. So if you look into the total serious AFI that is reported for our first campaign, it is around 48. And anaphylaxis comprises around 26%, but if you put into number, it is around just 10 only. And what, to our surprise, we found a lot of serious AFI seizures and alcohol withdrawals related seizures. And of course, there are so many other serious AFI that is put under the others. And if you look into the serious AFI rate per million doses, it comes around 100,000, and anaphylaxis rate is around 21 per million doses. Of course, for the first vaccine campaign, the vaccine we have used is the AstraZeneca, of course, the manufacturer by India, that is known as the Covishield. Next slide, please. And after the rolling out of the first the vaccination campaign, we realized that unknowingly, I think there are a lot of information that is being disseminated in the common social platform media, especially I think saying that if you wanted to get the COVID vaccine and to be effective, then people who are drinking alcohol should stop drinking it, and then people who are under medication should stop medication. So this is something I think Minister of Health, we are, as a NITEC, we are not aware, but I think this way I think some information that was I think being sort of circulated, and that's why I think we have seen a lot of the alcohol-related visual seizure, and also people who are under medication like epileptic, they didn't take the medicine, and that's why I think we have seen a lot of AFI on those two. But in the second campaign, then we actually again advocated, went to the media, and then advocated the people that for the COVID vaccination, you need any preparation. This is how I think in the second campaign, you'll find that we do not have much on the alcohol withdrawal syndrome. In fact, there's none. And of course, even seizure also, I think we are able to minimize to a very, very minimal. And of course, anaphylaxis, again, for the second campaign, the number is only 8, but if you put into the proportion, it comes around 47%. And the vaccine that we have used for the second campaign is the Morona vaccine. Again, there are a lot of sort of I would say mistrust among the people that if you do the mixed match vaccine, then there will be a lot of serious AFI, and there's a lot of unknown. So a lot of things that were revolving. But anyway, we are able to sort of advocate and communicate well with the people, and of course people respond well to take up the mixed match the vaccine that actually we were seeing. And if you see into the anaphylaxis, both the serious AFI and anaphylaxis rate, and you will find in the second campaign, I think it is it's minimal. Next slide, please. So then we also after doing the second campaign, we also done the causality assessment, of course, with the help of WHO expert. I forget the name of the professor, but he was from Australia, and NITEC and expert. We have collectively looked into all the serious AFI, that is 48 serious AFI reported in the first campaign and 17 serious AFI reported in the second campaign, and we are able to sort of classify as per guideline. So you'll find that in the first campaign from the anaphylaxis, I think we have classified them. So one fits into anaphylaxis level 1 and anaphylaxis level 2. 9 cases fits into that. Second campaign, again, anaphylaxis level 2, 7 number, and then anaphylaxis level 4. I think we could classify 1, and these are all vaccine product reiteration. And from the other one, we had again in the first campaign the sudden unexplained death, again caused by 3 people, and then stroke reported 3 person, and belly palsy and 1 person. And second campaign again we had a sudden unexplained death for 3. And these are also we are not really able to cause the establish the root cause of death, but since there's a temporal relation, so we have classified them and as a B2. And of course, as I said that since in the past campaign a lot of the serious AF were related to some alcohol-related seizure and people not taking medicine for the epileptic people. So we have a lot of cases in that. So this why these are all we have classified them as inconsistent causal association. So there's the causality assessment classification. Next slide, please. So lesson learned from Bhutan perspective, I think, we have been actually prepared well in advance, but again, no amount of preparedness is adequate, especially during the emergency situation when we have to roll out the new vaccine. And also in Bhutan, our experience, I think the leadership is very important, is very critical to roll out the vaccination. And again, we have been communicating with the people now again and again through various media platforms. I think that has really helped for the people, community participation, and also to have a very good high vaccine coverage. And in Bhutan, multi-stakeholder coordination, of course, in entire the COVID response, it was found very and also for the vaccination campaign, multi-stakeholder coordination was very key. Next slide, please. And the groundbreaking experience, as far as we are concerned, is developing the web base in advance, and we are able to sort of monitor the coverage on real-time basis. And most important thing is monitoring the AFI, whether it is serious AFI or minor AFI. Even in the minor AFI, I think the national AFI team committee, I think we have been sitting together in one room in the big television, front of the television, and everyone asks. We have divided the district, and we have been looking into actually even the minor AFI that report that they have missed any signal of a potential become a serious. So this is how I think we have been actively monitoring both at national as a regional level. And most important, and I think the critical decision that we have made for the vaccination campaign is deploying the clinician at the various vaccine posts so that they are there to manage the serious AFI on time. So that's why I think we have not lost any single cases through any anaphylaxis that reported. And of course, again, as I said, that although Bhutan is a small country, but again, because of geographical terrain, I think it is always advantage to have a capacity at the regional level so that they also help the national AFI team to investigate the case and also provide the experts during the vaccination. So that's my last slide. And next slide. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak on Bhutan experience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Soman, for that really nice explanation of how Bhutan set up a very rigorous vaccine safety surveillance system and for the lessons learned. We are just about at the end of the hour. I know we had hoped to have some time for questions, and I see that there are several questions in the Q&A. I don't want to go too much over time. I don't know if there's one quick one, Dan. I don't know if you've been monitoring that, or we want to take one quick one for a minute and then wrap up. But we will do our best to answer these questions to get back to people on some of these questions.
Thanks, Bill. I've been watching these questions answered in near real time, which is great. I think most of the questions have been answered by our speakers. I have just a minute. I guess maybe one question I would pull from the chat that hasn't been answered. Does the use of emergency approval provision at the national level after the WHO revoked the status a reasonable step? And I guess the real question here is what impact that will have on vaccine safety studies. So maybe one of our speakers wants to comment on what things look like moving forward.
Dr. Madhav, you just have to unmute. Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, Madhav here. Yeah, as you know, just because the emergency provision is being revoked, it doesn't really change anything with regard to the vaccine safety studies, because as far as we are concerned, even post-marketing surveillance needs to go on, and the studies will have to go on it, because we still find there's a lot of things which we are learning with these particular vaccines, So for us, the ground realities, it does not change anything much at the ground level.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Madhav. And maybe we'll wrap up. I know I'm glad to hear that the speakers were, thank you to the speakers for answering the questions. And maybe just in closing, again, I want to thank all of our speakers for their wonderful presentations from the global, regional, and country level. I want to thank all of our participants for joining us. We will be providing to our participants the WIPRO manuscripts and a brief on vaccine safety from the IVAC ADB project. And I also want to just make people aware that IVAC and the Asian Development Bank will be hosting a webinar on vaccine manufacturing in late August, early September. And so we'll be announcing the final date on that. So thank you again to all our speakers. It was a wonderful webinar, and I want to thank our participants, and just thanks to everyone, and thanks to Sherry for organizing it.